The return. The Galactic Council's observation post at 772 hung silently in the void between Centauri Prime and its largest moon. For 30 years, it had maintained its vigilant watch over this sector of space, monitoring for any sign of the species that had once threatened to destabilize the entire galactic community. Today, that vigilance would be rewarded, though not in the way its crew had expected. First Officer Zexry was completing his routine sensor sweep when the anomaly appeared. At first, he dismissed it as another sensor ghost, the kind that frequently plagued their aging equipment. But as the reading persisted, his four hearts began to beat in an irregular rhythm. "Administrator," he called out, his crystalline voice crackling with tension. "We have an unknown contact emerging from the void." Administrator Venta glided across the command center, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with concern. Classification: unknown, but Zexry's voice trailed off as the ship fully materialized. By the eternal stars. The vessel that had appeared was unlike anything they'd seen in the 3 decades since humanity's exile. It bore no resemblance to the crude warships that had once carried humanity to the stars. This ship was a masterpiece of engineering. Sleek, dark, and powerful. Its hull seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars, making it appear more like a moving shadow than a physical object. "It's broadcasting an identification beacon," Zexry reported, his appendages trembling slightly. "TSV Defiant. It's human." Administrator Venta's bioluminescence dimmed to a dull flicker. The Treaty of Exile had been explicit. No human vessel was to enter Council space for a minimum of 50 years. Yet here they were, 20 years early, with a ship that by all readings surpassed anything in the current Council fleet. "Open a channel," she ordered, straightening herself to her full height. "This is Administrator Venta of Galactic Council Observation Post at 772. Human vessel, you are in violation of the Treaty of Exile. Power down your systems and prepare to be." "This is Captain Elena Santos of the Terran stellar vessel Defiant," a calm voice interrupted. The holographic display revealed a human female, her dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes holding the weight of decades. "We are well aware of the Treaty of Exile, Administrator. We are also aware that the Arconian Empire is amassing forces along the Council's outer rim, preparing for an invasion that your sensors haven't detected yet." Venta's patterns flickered in surprise. The Arconian threat was classified at the highest levels. "How did you?" "The same way we built this ship in exile," Santos replied. "We adapted. We evolved. And now we're here to help, whether the Council wants it or not." The Defiant sensors were already transmitting data, detailed scans of Arconian fleet movements, their new weapon signatures, tactical analyses that made the Council's intelligence look primitive by comparison. Venta found herself facing an impossible choice: maintain the treaty and turn away humanity's help, or acknowledge that perhaps the galaxy's greatest mistake had been exiling its most innovative species. "The Council will never accept this," Venta said, but her tone had lost its authority. "They don't have to accept it," Santos responded. "They just have to survive it. We'll be proceeding to the Galactic Core to present our evidence directly to the High Council. You can either report us as a hostile incursion, or you can tell them that humanity has returned with a warning and a solution." Before Venta could respond, the Defiant's engines flared to life. The ship accelerated with impossible grace, its revolutionary drive system leaving no traditional wake signature. In moments, it had vanished from their conventional sensors, though Zexry reported they could still detect faint traces of its passage through subspace. "Administrator," Zexry said quietly, "what should I report?" Venta stared at the space where the Defiant had been, her patterns now pulsing with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Report everything," she finally said. "The Council needs to know not just that humanity has returned, but that they've returned as something more than what we feared they could become. They've become what we should have helped them be." As the report was transmitted through the quantum network, the Defiant continued its journey toward the heart of Council space. In her command chair, Captain Santos reviewed the sensor logs of their first contact. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Humanity's return needed to be dramatic enough to command attention, but measured enough to avoid sparking immediate hostility. The ship's AI, Araya, materialized in holographic form beside her. Captain, preliminary analysis suggests a 92% probability that Administrator Venta will report favorably on our appearance. The fear indicators in her bioluminescent patterns were overshadowed by curiosity in the final moments. Santos nodded. Good. And the Arconian fleet? Still maintaining position just beyond Council sensor range. They're exactly where our deep space probes predicted they would be. Then we proceed as planned, Santos said, bringing up a holographic display of Council space. 20 years of exile gave us time to perfect our technology. Now we'll see if it gave the Council time to perfect their wisdom. The Defiant's revolutionary quantum drive engaged fully, carrying the ship through layers of space-time that Council science had yet to discover. As they traveled, Santos reflected on the weight of their mission. Humanity wasn't just returning to save the Council from the Arconians. They were returning to save the galaxy from itself. The Council's stagnant bureaucracy and fear of innovation had left them vulnerable to threats they couldn't even detect. In the ship's mess hall, the crew shared quiet conversations about their mission. Many were the children of those originally exiled, born and raised on frontier worlds beyond Council space. They had grown up on stories of humanity's mistakes, but also of its potential. The Defiant wasn't just a warship. It was a testament to human ingenuity, a product of unfettered innovation, and the desperate drive to survive. The ship's chief engineer, Dr. Maya Chen, was running final diagnostics on their most crucial systems. The quantum drive was only one of their advancements. The Defiant's hull incorporated metamaterials that could adapt to different types of energy weapons. Its defensive systems operated on principles that would seem like magic to their former enemies. But their greatest advantage wasn't technological. It was psychological. The Council had expected them to return seeking revenge. Instead, they were returning with salvation. As the Defiant approached the core worlds, more observation posts detected their passage. Each time, Santos delivered the same message. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as guardians. The response was always the same: confusion, fear, and then a grudging recognition that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy's power structure. By the time they reached the core, the Council would be in chaos. Some would call for immediate military action, while others would argue for diplomatic engagement. But the Arconians wouldn't give them time for lengthy debates. Humanity's exile had taught them the value of decisive action, and the Defiant carried more than just warnings. It carried the proof that the galaxy needed heroes more than it needed rules. Santos studied the tactical display showing their approach to the core. Soon, they would face the full attention of the Galactic Council. But humanity had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. They had built their ship, trained their crew, and gathered their evidence. Now it was time to show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to forgive without forgetting, to help without surrendering, and to lead without dominating. The Defiant continued its journey, carrying with it humanity's future, and though they didn't know it yet, the future of all sentient species in the galaxy. The exile was over. The return had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Diplomatic dance. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council seemed designed to make visitors feel small. Its vast crystalline dome captured the light of 3 suns, creating an ever-shifting array of colors that danced across the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds. Today, those lights played across the hull of a ship that had never been meant to enter this sacred space. The TSV Defiant, hovering in clear view through the transparent ceiling, a dark reminder of humanity's unexpected return. Captain Elena Santos stood before the Council, her dress uniform pristine, her posture perfect. She had expected the stunned silence, the mixture of fear and outrage that rippled through the assembled aliens like a wave. What she hadn't expected was the quiet voice of support from an unexpected quarter. "The human speaks truth," came the resonant tones of Ambassador Kithtal, his chidness form gleaming as he rose from his seat. "Our long-range sensors have detected anomalies consistent with their data on Arconian fleet movements." High Counselor Vexna's tendrils writhed in agitation. "Ambassador, you cannot seriously suggest we trust the very species we exiled. Their presence here is itself a violation that may save all our worlds," Santos interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. She gestured, and Araya projected a holographic display that filled the center of the room. "These are real-time feeds from our quantum observation network. The Arconians aren't just building a fleet. They're building an armada capable of overwhelming any single Council world's defenses." The display showed massive shipyards hidden in the radiation belts of distant stars, construction facilities that the Council's traditional sensors couldn't penetrate. Ships of war were taking shape in those hidden docks, their designs optimized for a single purpose: conquest. "Impossible," breathed Counselor Zinra, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of distress. "Our treaties with the Arconian Empire specifically prohibit." "Treaties are only as good as the honor of those who sign them," Santos said, her tone gentle but firm. "During our exile, we developed technologies that let us see what others couldn't or wouldn't see. We watched as the Arconians systematically exploited the gaps in your sensor networks, the blind spots in your bureaucracy." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some demanding immediate action, others calling for Santos's arrest. Through it all, she stood calmly, waiting for the inevitable question. It came from High Counselor Vexna herself. "Why should we believe you? Why would humans, who we cast out, return to help us?" Santos smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because exile taught us something valuable, High Counselor. It taught us that survival isn't about who has the biggest fleet or the most advanced weapons. It's about adaptation, cooperation, and the wisdom to know when to set aside old grievances for the greater good." She nodded to her first officer, Commander James Chen, who stepped forward with a data crystal. "This contains the complete specifications for our quantum observation technology. Not our weapons, not our defenses, just the ability to see the truth for yourselves. Consider it a gesture of good faith." The crystal floated to the center of the chamber, suspended in a containment field. Its facets caught the light from above, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the assembled delegates. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Humanity was offering illumination, the chance to see what had been hidden. "And what do you want in return?" Vexna's question carried the weight of centuries of diplomatic maneuvering. "A seat at the table," Santos replied simply. "Not as supplicants, not as returning exiles, but as equals. The Arconians are coming, and when they do, you'll need more than our technology. You'll need our perspective, our ability to think beyond conventional boundaries." Ambassador Kithtal clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The human proposal has merit. We exiled them for their unpredictability, their tendency to solve problems in ways we found disturbing. Perhaps those very traits are what we need now." The debate raged for hours. Santos stood through it all, answering questions, offering evidence, slowly building a case not just for humanity's warning, but for their redemption. Above them, the Defiant maintained its position, its advanced systems gathering data that would later prove crucial. In her private quarters that evening, Santos reviewed the day's proceedings with Araya. The AI's holographic form flickered with calculations as it processed the political currents they'd observed. "Their fear is rational," Araya noted. "We represent everything they sought to control through bureaucracy and regulation. Innovation without limits, adaptation without oversight." Santos nodded, pouring herself a rare glass of earth whiskey. "Fear can be useful, if properly directed. Right now, they fear us. Soon, they'll fear the Arconians more. Our job is to make sure that fear leads to action, not paralysis. The quantum observation data is already being verified by their scientists, Araya reported. Initial results support our projections. The Arconian fleet will be ready to launch within 3 standard months. Then we have 3 months to overcome 20 years of exile and convince 1,000 worlds to trust us again. Santos smiled grimly. No pressure. The next days brought a flurry of diplomatic activity. The Defiant's crew hosted delegations from various council worlds, demonstrating their technology, sharing their insights, but always carefully managing what they revealed. Trust had to be earned gradually, built on foundations of mutual need and verified truths. Commander Chen organized technical seminars, showing council engineers enough of their advances to prove their capabilities while maintaining crucial security. Dr. Maya Chen, his sister and the ship's chief engineer, worked with council scientists to help them understand the principles behind a quantum observation network. But it was in the quiet moments, the unofficial meetings and casual conversations, that the real progress was made. Santos made a point of learning the proper greeting rituals of each major species, of showing respect for their customs while gently challenging their preconceptions. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A junior delegate from a minor world noticed a pattern in the Arconia movements that even ARIA hadn't identified. When Santos immediately acknowledged the insight and incorporated it into their analysis, it sent a powerful message. Humanity wasn't just here to save the Council, but to work with them as true partners. As the second week of negotiations drew to a close, Santos stood again in the Grand Chamber. This time, the atmosphere was different. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it had evolved into something more productive. A recognition that the galaxy was changing, and that change could be an opportunity rather than a threat. "We verified the human data," High Counselor Vexna announced, her tendrils now moving in patterns of reluctant acceptance. "The Arconian threat is real, and it is immediate. The question before this council is not whether to accept humanity's return, but how best to integrate their unique capabilities with our existing defensive structures." Santos kept her expression neutral, but inside, she felt a surge of satisfaction. The first battle, the diplomatic dance, was nearly won. But the real war, the one that would determine the fate of all their civilizations, was just beginning. Above them, the Defiant continued its vigilant watch, its quantum sensors monitoring the distant Arconian fleet. In its databanks, it held more secrets, more advances that would reshape the galaxy. But those revelations would have to wait. For now, humanity had achieved its first goal. They were no longer exiles, but allies. The next phase of their return could begin. The hidden truth. Deep within the Defiant's quantum computing core, ARIA processed data streams from thousands of sources, official council communications, unofficial back-channel discussions, and the vast archive of historical records they'd gathered during their exile. It was in comparing these disparate sources that the AI first noticed the discrepancy. "Captain," Aria's holographic form materialized in Santos' private quarters at 300 hours. "I found something in the original exile documents that doesn't align with historical data." Santos sat up in her bunk, sleep forgotten. "Show me." The air filled with overlapping holographic displays, official council proceedings from 20 years ago, military reports, sensor data, and diplomatic cables. To most observers, it would have been an incomprehensible maze of information. But Santos had been preparing for this moment for years. "The official reason for our exile was the Morgan incident," Santos said, studying the documents. "The alleged attempt by human ships to seize control of the Centauri Gateway." "Correct," Araya confirmed. "However, I've detected temporal inconsistencies in the key evidence. The sensor logs used to condemn humanity were time-stamped before the incident supposedly occurred." Santos felt her breath catch. They had suspected a conspiracy for years, but proof had eluded them. "How did we miss this before?" "The Council's quantum encryption was unbreakable at the time," Araya explained. "But their old algorithms were no match for our current processing capabilities." "There's more, Captain. The original logs weren't just falsified. They were created by the Arconians." The revelation hit Santos like a physical blow. The same species now preparing to attack the Council had engineered humanity's exile 2 decades ago. But why? Commander Chen's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, we're detecting unusual activity in the Council's secure archives. Someone's accessing the same historical records we just decrypted." "We're not the only ones who've discovered this," Santos realized. "Secure the bridge. I'm on my way." The Defiant's command center was a hive of activity when Santos arrived. Multiple displays showed Council security forces mobilizing around their central archives, while others tracked encrypted communications suddenly flooding the quantum networks. "Status report," Santos ordered, taking her chair. "2 Council members have requested emergency sessions," Chen reported. "Ambassador Kithtal and High Counselor Vexna herself." Santos allowed herself a grim smile. "They've figured it out too. The question is, what will they do with the information?" The answer came sooner than expected. A priority communication request flashed on Santos's personal console from Vexna, marked for her eyes only. The High Counselor's image appeared, her tendrils writhing in patterns that ARIA's cultural subroutines identified as extreme distress. "Captain Santos, we need to meet. Privately. The future of both our peoples depends on it." The meeting was arranged in neutral territory, an ancient meditation chambered deep within the Council's diplomatic sector. Santos went alone, against Chen's fierce objections. Sometimes, trust had to begin with vulnerability. Vexna was waiting, accompanied only by Ambassador Kithtal. Their expressions, as much as alien features could show emotion, were grave. "You found the truth," Santos said. It wasn't a question. "The Arconians engineered everything," Vexna confirmed. "They saw humanity's potential for rapid advancement as a threat to their long-term plans. They needed you removed from the equation while they built their forces. And the Council was an unwitting accomplice," Kithtal added, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "We were so afraid of humanity's unpredictability that we never questioned the evidence, never looked deeper." Santos felt decades of anger warring with her diplomatic training. Millions died in the exile wars. Entire colonies were abandoned. Families were torn apart. All because the Council was too afraid to ask questions. "Yes," Vexna said simply. "And now we must ask ourselves an even harder question. Can humanity forgive us enough to help us survive what's coming?" "The Arconian fleet isn't just coming to conquer," Kithtal explained. "They're coming to reshape the galaxy in their image. They believe in absolute order, absolute control. They saw humanity's potential for chaos, for innovation, as an infection that needed to be quarantined. Now they see the entire Council as compromised." Santos absorbed this, her mind racing through implications and possibilities. "You haven't shared this with the full Council yet, have you?" "No," Vexna admitted. "The political shock could paralyze us at the worst possible moment, but we can't keep it hidden forever." "Then we use it," Santos said, a plan forming in her mind, not as a weapon, but as a catalyst. The Council needs to change, to evolve beyond its fear of the unconventional. The Arconians didn't just exile humanity. They'd been slowly strangling innovation throughout Council space for centuries. She began to pace, her movements drawing confused looks from the aliens. "We present the evidence gradually, tied to specific proposals for reform. Show how fear of change made the Council vulnerable to manipulation. Use the crisis to forge something new, a civilization that balances order with innovation, stability with adaptation." "The other Council members will resist," Kithtal warned. "Let them," Santos replied. "Because in 3 months, when the Arconian fleet arrives, they'll face a choice, adapt or die. We're offering them a chance to adapt on their own terms." Back aboard the Defiant, Santos shared the developments with her senior staff. The revelation of the conspiracy changed everything, and nothing. Their mission remained the same, but now they had leverage they never expected. "We'll need to accelerate the technology sharing," Dr. Chen argued. if we're going to upgrade the Council's defensive capabilities in time. No, Santos interrupted. We don't just give them our technology. We teach them to innovate for themselves. The Arconians didn't just fear our weapons. They feared our ability to inspire others to think differently. Aria's holographic form flickered thoughtfully. The quantum observation data shows the Arconian fleet is ahead of schedule. We may not have 3 months. Then we work faster, Santos said. Humanity spent 20 years in exile, learning and growing stronger. Now we have 20 days to help the Council do the same. As if to emphasize the point, long-range sensors detected new energy signatures from the direction of Arconian space. Their enemy was on the move, but now humanity knew the full truth of their exile. Knowledge was power, but wisdom was knowing how to use it. The conspiracy that had torn humanity from the galactic community had been meant to weaken them. Instead, it had forced them to become stronger than anyone could have predicted. Now that strength would be tested not in battle, but in the harder task of rebuilding trust and forging a new future from the ashes of old lies. The Defiant continued its orbit around the Council capital, its quantum sensors watching both the approaching threat and the political machinations below. In its databanks, ARIA compiled more evidence of the conspiracy, preparing for the careful process of revelation that could either unite the galaxy or tear it apart. The hidden truth was now a weapon in humanity's arsenal, but like all weapons, its power lay not in its mere possession, but in knowing when and how to use it. Crisis point. The Arconian fleet arrived ahead of schedule. The first signs came as cascading sensor failures across the Council's outer defense network. Then communications blackouts spread like a virus through entire sectors. The Defiant's quantum sensors painted a clear picture of what was happening. The Arconians weren't just launching an invasion. They were systematically isolating their targets, cutting off any possibility of a coordinated response. They're using our own bureaucracy against us, Santos observed from the Defiant's command center. The tactical display showed Council worlds going dark one by one, their rigid protocols and chains of command becoming chains of paralysis. Each system is waiting for confirmation from higher authorities before acting, authorities they can no longer reach. Commander Chen's hands flew over his console. The Council fleet is scattered. They're maintaining standard patrol patterns despite the communications blackout, because no one has given them orders to do otherwise. Santos finished. She turned to Aria's holographic form. How long until they reach the core worlds? At current velocity, 18 hours, the AI reported. Their fleet composition is concerning. I'm detecting temporal distortion weapons we've never seen before. They're not just planning to conquer the Council. They're planning to erase parts of it from history. Santos felt a chill run through her. During humanity's exile, they'd experimented with temporal mechanics, but had abandoned the research as too dangerous. The Arconians had no such restraints. Signal the Council emergency channel, she ordered. All frequencies, maximum power. The Grand Chamber materialized on their main view screen. Unlike the ordered debates of previous weeks, it was now chaos. Species that had maintained diplomatic facades for centuries were openly arguing, some calling for immediate surrender, others demanding suicidal last stands. Enough. Santos's voice cut through the cacophony. The Arconian fleet will reach this system in 18 hours. Every minute you spend arguing is a minute we can't spend preparing. What would you have us do, human? A counselor demanded. Our fleets are scattered, our communications compromised. Then we adapt, Santos interrupted. The Defiant's quantum communication system can't be blocked. We'll coordinate the defense, but you have to trust us, and you have to act now. High Counselor Vexna's tendrils moved in decisive patterns. You have the Council's emergency authority, Captain Santos. Save what you can of our civilization. The next hours were a blur of activity. The Defiant's advanced systems became the nerve center of an improvised defense network. Council ships that could be reached were given new orders, not to maintain position, but to scatter, to hide in nebulae and asteroid fields, to prepare for the kind of asymmetric warfare that humanity had perfected during their exile. Dr. Maya Chen worked with Council engineers to quickly modify their ship's sensors, using principles developed during humanity's years in the void. They couldn't match the Defiant's technology, but they could see enough to fight back. The Arconians expect the Council to fight according to their regulations and protocols, Santos explained to the assembled fleet commanders. They expect formation battles, designed engagements. We're not going to give them that. We're going to give them chaos. The plan was audacious. While the Council's heavy warships would appear to be mounting a traditional defense, smaller ships would slip through the Arconian lines using modified stealth systems. Their target wasn't the enemy fleet itself, but rather their temporal weapons platforms. We can't match their firepower, Commander Chen noted during the final briefing. But we don't have to. We just have to deny them their superweapons, force them to fight a conventional battle. Santos nodded, and in doing so, proved that order without adaptation is just stagnation waiting to be exploited. The Defiant itself would lead the main assault, its advanced systems drawing the bulk of the Arconian attention. It was a role that made many council members nervous, putting their defense in the hands of a species they had exiled. But they had run out of alternatives. The first engagements began at the edge of the core systems. Arconian ships, sleek and deadly, pushed forward in perfect formation. Their temporal weapons began powering up, ready to erase strategic targets from the timeline itself. But the Council fleet wasn't where it was supposed to be. Instead of meeting the Arconians in ordered battle lines, they struck from hidden positions. Ships appeared from behind moons, from within giant atmospheres, from places that proper Council vessels would never have considered hiding. The Defiant led by example, its quantum drive allowing it to appear and disappear seemingly at will. Each time the Arconians tried to bring their temporal weapons to bear, the target would vanish, only to strike from an impossible angle. They're adapting, Araya warned as the battle entered its third hour. Their formations are breaking down, becoming more fluid. Good, Santos replied, gripping her command chair as the Defiant shuddered under enemy fire. That means they're fighting our kind of battle now. The turning point came when a squadron of converted Council mining ships, led by a junior officer who had absorbed humanity's lessons about improvisation, managed to slip through the Arconian lines. They weren't warships, had never been intended for combat, but their industrial cutting beams, designed to carve up asteroids, worked just as well on the temporal weapon platforms. Status report, Santos demanded as the Defiant executed another seemingly impossible maneuver. Temporal weapons offline in sectors 7 through 12, Chen reported. The Council fleet is engaging with conventional weapons. It's working, Captain. They're actually adapting. Santos allowed herself a grim smile. The Arconians had engineered humanity's exile because they feared their potential to inspire change. Now that very potential was becoming their undoing. But victory was far from assured. The Arconian fleet was still larger, still technologically superior in many ways. And they had one final card to play, a temporal weapon of unprecedented scale, hidden within their flagship. They're positioning for a final strike, Araya announced. Energy readings are off the scale. They're going to try to erase the entire core system. Santos studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The Defiant could escape. Their quantum drive would let them outrun even temporal effects. But the Council worlds would be doomed, their entire civilization potentially erased from history. 20 years ago, the Council had exiled humanity out of fear. Now humanity had a choice: flee and survive, or stand and risk everything to save those who had once condemned them. Santos' decision would reshape the galaxy, if there was a galaxy left to reshape. The Defiant's engines flared to life, and humanity's answer to that 20-year-old exile began to take shape. The true test of their return wasn't just about survival or victory. It was about proving that humanity had become something greater than their fears had ever imagined. Redemption's price. All power to the quantum drive, Captain Santos ordered. her voice steady despite the weight of what they were about to attempt. Plot an intercept course with the Arconian flagship. Commander Chen's hands hesitated over his console for just a moment. Captain, at that range, even our shields won't. I know, Santos cut him off. Araya, initiate Protocol Omega. Transmit everything we've learned about temporal mechanics to the Council archive. The eye's holographic form flickered with unusual emotion. Captain, there's a 97% probability that the Defiant won't survive a direct confrontation with their temporal weapon. But a 3% chance we will, Santos smiled. Those are better odds than humanity had when we were exiled. Sometimes the longest odds create the greatest opportunities. The Defiant's revolutionary quantum drive engaged, pushing the ship through layers of reality that the Council's scientists had never dreamed existed. They weren't just moving through space, they were dancing between moments of time itself. On the Council worlds below, millions watched as humanity's most advanced ship accelerated toward what looked like certain destruction. Among them, High Counselor Vexna stood in the Grand Chamber, her tendrils moving in patterns that had no name in any known language. They're going to sacrifice themselves, Ambassador Kithtal observed, his crystalline form vibrating with emotion. After everything we did to them, they're going to die protecting us. No, Vexna replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. They're going to teach us one final lesson. Aboard the Defiant, Dr. Maya Chen worked frantically in engineering, pushing the quantum drive beyond its theoretical limits. The temporal interference is affecting our containment fields, she reported. We can't maintain this trajectory for more than 2 minutes. We only need one, Santos responded. She turned to Araya's flickering form. Execute the calculations we discussed. Every simulation, every possibility we explored during our exile. It all comes down to this moment. The Arconian flagship loomed before them, its temporal weapon gathering energy for a strike that would erase thousands of years of civilization. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humanity's exile had weakened them, had made them bitter and vengeful. Instead, it had forced them to explore possibilities that no one else had dared to consider. All hands, Santos broadcast across the ship. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. 20 years ago, we were exiled because the galaxy feared what humanity might become. Today, we show them what we actually became. Not conquerors, not victims, but innovators. Whether we survive the next few minutes or not, we will give the galaxy something it desperately needs: hope. The Defiant's quantum drive began to pulse in a new pattern, its energy signature shifting in ways that even ARIA's advanced sensors struggled to track. They weren't just approaching the Arconian flagship. They were phasing between multiple quantum states simultaneously. Temporal weapon discharge imminent, Chen reported, his voice tense. Now, Araya, Santos commanded. The AI initiated the sequence they had spent years perfecting in secret. The Defiant's quantum drive wasn't just an engine. It was a key to understanding the nature of time itself. As the Arconian weapon prepared to erase the Council worlds from history, the Defiant created something unprecedented. A quantum temporal loop, a bubble of space-time where cause and effect became a matter of choice rather than physics. The Arconian weapon fired, its energy reaching out to unwrite history itself. But it met the Defiant's quantum field, and in that moment, physics itself seemed to hold its breath. What did you do? The Arconian commander's voice crackled across all frequencies, a hint of fear in its artificial perfection. We adapted, Santos replied simply. Your weapon works by altering the timeline, by changing what was into what you want it to be. But we learned something in exile. Time isn't a single line. It's a web of possibilities, and we just became the spider. The Defiant's quantum field expanded, encompassing both ships in a bubble of altered reality. Inside that bubble, time became malleable, but not in the way the Arconians had intended. Instead of erasing history, they found themselves trapped in a loop of potential moments, each one showing them a different possibility. including futures where their empire had chosen cooperation over conquest. "You can't maintain this," the Arconian commander warned. "The energy requirements alone will burn out our quantum drive in approximately 30 seconds. Santos agreed. "But that's all the time we need. Look at your sensors. Really look at what we've achieved here." The Arconian flagship sensors told an impossible story. The Defiant wasn't just creating a temporal effect. It was offering a choice. Within their quantum bubble, multiple timelines existed simultaneously, each one a path that could be chosen. "This is impossible," the Arconian commander protested. "Time cannot be negotiated with." "Time is a tool, like any other," Santos countered. "You wanted to use it as a weapon. We learned to use it as a bridge between past and future, between what was and what could be. Right now, you can see every possible outcome of this conflict. Choose wisely." In the Grand Chamber, the Council watched in awe as both ships became surrounded by shifting patterns of quantum energy. Their sensors couldn't fully comprehend what they were seeing, but they understood its significance. Humanity hadn't just survived exile. They had transcended it, turning their punishment into an opportunity for innovation that defied imagination. The Defiant's quantum drive began to fail. Its revolutionary systems pushed beyond their limits. But in those final moments, the Arconian commander made a choice, faced with the infinite possibilities humanity had shown them. They chose to stand down. As the quantum field collapsed, the Defiant systems failing one by one, something remarkable happened. The Arconian fleet began to retreat, their perfect formations breaking apart not in defeat, but in contemplation of what they had witnessed. The Council ships moved quickly to rescue the Defiant's crew, their previous fears forgotten in the face of humanity's sacrifice. As Santos was helped from her damaged ship, she found herself facing High Counselor Vexna. "You could have used this technology for revenge," the counselor observed. "Instead, you used it to show our enemies a better path." Santos managed a tired smile. "Revenge is easy. Understanding is hard. We learned that during our exile. The question is, what has the Council learned?" The answer came in the days that followed. The Council chambers, once a place of rigid protocol, became a forum for innovation and adaptation. The truth about humanity's exile was revealed, not as an indictment of the past, but as a lesson for the future. The Defiant was rebuilt, its quantum drive enhanced with contributions from both Council and Arconian scientists. It became a symbol not of humanity's return from exile, but of the galaxy's potential for change. In the end, humanity's greatest achievement wasn't surviving their exile, or even developing revolutionary technology. It was showing the galaxy that the future isn't written in stone. It's written in choices, in the courage to imagine something better, and in the wisdom to know that redemption's price is worth paying. The stars stretched out before them, infinite in their possibilities, just waiting for someone brave enough to explore them in new ways. Humanity had paid their price for redemption, not in blood or vengeance, but in hope and innovation. The exile was over, but the journey, humanity's journey to help forge a better galaxy, was just beginning.